This is Linux in Laws, a podcast on topics around free and open source software, any associated contraband, communism, the revolution in general, and whatever else fancies your tickle. Please note that this and other episodes may contain strong language, offensive humor, and other certainly not politically correct language. You have been warned. Our parents insisted on this disclaimer. Happy, Mum? Thus, the content is not suitable for consumption in the workplace, especially when played back on a speaker in an open plan office or similar environments. Any minors under the age of 35, or any pets, including fluffy little killer bunnies, your trusted guide dog, unless on speed, and cute T-Rexes or other associated dinosaurs. Welcome to Linux in Laws, Season 2, Episode 9. Martin, how are things?
Yes. Interesting is the word, yeah.
Interesting. Why is that now, Martin? I mean, it's kind of early April.
Yeah.
The weather
no, it isn't. Well, it will be by the time we do that, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Martin is getting confused as usual, but that's okay. No worries.
Just testing.
Yes. Yes, we are still talking about early April 2024 in the year of the Lord, so to speak. And well, Martin, without further ado, let's cut to the chase. What happened?
Well, there was an official announcement by our friends at Redis, right?
There was actually. That was kind of 20th of March or something.
Yes,
maybe
yeah,
24th
that's right. Yeah.
Or whatever.
No,
exactly.
20th, yeah, about a week ago.
Yes.
A week and a bit, and a month.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But before we go...
Recent. Yes.
Yes, and the first cut in the episode where I actually opened a can of beer because we're going to get out something for the outtakes, I suppose.
Let's see.
Well, Martin, now is the time to grab some coffee or whatever. Anyway.
I have coffee. Okay. Yep.
So, Martin, before we go into the details,
okay,
we should probably speak a little bit about the history of the whole thing, and needless to say, also about our two heroes, namely, yes,
Salvatore is one.
No. Martin Visser and Chris Zimmerman, of course.
Oh, so we're talking about
these heroes, yes.
Right. Okay. So I thought
also affectionately known as the Linux in-laws.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, because I reckon it's fair to say that without Redis Labs, as the company was then known, there wouldn't be Linux in-laws in its current shape, I suppose.
For sure.
Full disclosure, because Martin and myself all met at Redis Labs when I was a solution architect. Martin joined, and then we met, fell in love, and created the podcast. And the rest, of course, is history.
Indeed.
The history goes even back further, because why don't we take a trip down memory lane and shed some light on the history of said project?
Okay. Well, history of said project is once upon a time.
Yes,
there was an Italian living on a small island in somewhere off the coast of Italy, and one day he had enough of catching fish, and he thought, "Oh, I need some files."
This is a romantic
memory database
of the secret of that. Salvatore, if you're listening, this is not taken to be verbatim.
No,
but Martin, keep talking anyway.
All seriousness, he was Salvatore was consulting, and he needed a certain type of, let's say, a piece of software.
Call it a database, Martin.
No. He needed a certain piece of software. No, it's not a database. It is a.
Well, it fucking is anyway.
It's a remote. No. It's a remote dictionary, actually.
Yes, but it's a remote dictionary server.
Yes, that too.
Hence the name Redis. Yes.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. But anyway, remote dictionary.
Okay, go ahead.
But yeah, so he couldn't find anything that could do such a functionality at the time, so he thought, I'll write it myself. And that's how Redis began.
Well, he looked at Memcache and other projects.
True. Yeah, but he couldn't serve his needs, right? This was the thing.
So he set off to write a NoSQL database in the shape of a key value store, very much like Memcache at the time, I might add. with the important difference that, of course, it is a database, never mind what Martin tells you, but persistence, of course, with that type of key-value store is optional. Hence, the imminent pickup of the community, I'm tempted to say, as a cache.
Yes, well, still the predominant use case, right?
Absolutely. So, Martin, I mean, he set out to do the first commit, I think, in 2009 or something, or 2010?
It sounds about right, yeah.
So what happened afterwards?
Well, after that, at the time, VMware was very much into open source projects, RabbitMQ, one of them, Redis being the other one. So I thought, why not hire Salvatore and take sort of ownership of the project? Oh, not ownership, but you know what I mean. So he has a sponsor and so on. So they kind of sponsor Salvatore, but
among other people, I might add.
Among other people, indeed, yes. So yes, VMware was very much in the application space, right? So not so much the relational databases and the analytics databases. They were application backing services like Redis, like obviously communication for like RabbitMQ and so on. So those kind of projects, they're very much into open source. So let's sponsor these open source projects. Let's hire some of these people, make sure that the open source carries on. Great. And however, after a while, they didn't quite know what to do with Salvatore, and Redis wasn't that popular at the time.
Well,
which is where
up quickly.
It picked up quickly, but that was more. I think it picked up quicker after the Israeli takeover, right?
Why don't you explain the Israeli takeover in that case?
Well, there was a businessman in Israel.
Two of them, no? As a matter of fact.
Well, one of them was a businessman. One of them was very much a techie. So the businessman, I think he used to sell toys and stuff like that before.
Details may, of course, be
running
exactly.
Anyway, yes. So Yiftach, being a CTO, became CTO of Redis and offered a CEO.
The idea at the time, of course, was to offer Redis as a managed service in something known as cloud.
Yes, they were very much one of the first. Well, not one of the first. It was one of the leading people to run it as a service or offer it as a service. Indeed, as you say.
Yes, exactly. Database as a service, of course, in managed shape. So that was the original idea, even before the bookshop came to the conclusion that actually creating something called ElastiCache might be a good idea, because we are talking essentially about 2012 when a company was known then as Redis Labs was founded in Israel.
Yep.
I think in Israel or Silicon Valley. I think they founded.
No, they started in Israel and then.
I think it was called Grantita Data or something like that, right? And
Garantia.
Garantia, and then they moved the whole thing to Silicon Valley because of venture capital, and then it became Redis Labs.
Venture capital and a potential IPO, which hasn't happened.
Exactly. And then I think they both flew to Sicily with a lot of cash and made Salvatore an offer that he couldn't refuse.
Yes. Well,
not just cash, I reckon.
We don't know about the cash, but
exactly. But certainly a portion of the newly minted company changed hands, I suppose, to some extent. Pure speculation, Loris, if you're listening, this is our interpretation of the matter. The reality might differ.
Details in the show notes,
they may or may not be in the show notes, exactly.
So
what happened afterwards, Martin?
What happened afterwards? Well, many things happened.
Trump clearly, but even before Trump
let's so Redis Labs was pretty much for some time. All the contributors, the majority of the contributors worked for Redis Labs, right? For a long time.
Yes. Well, Salvatore was probably the key contributor in that case.
Yes, of course. There was a Dutch guy, actually, I've forgotten his name, who did a lot of the early work on Redis.
Peter somebody.
Yes.
Details maybe in the show notes, yes.
Anyway, it'll be on GitHub anyway, so it's fine.
Yes.
So then what happened was, as we know, that, as you already mentioned, AWS thought, this is quite a handy service for people that need applications to have at their disposal in the public cloud. So we'll offer it as well as under the name of Elasticache.
Elasticache, yes.
Yes, other clouds did similar things. Azure
all
Cache
the major
Google Memory Store or whatever it is. Yeah. Yeah.
What happened in 2040 or 2415? Remember? You weren't working. You weren't working for Redis Labs at the time. Neither was I. But a very important change entered the code base, namely so-called modules.
Yes, the modules. Yeah, modules were. Well, modules are a good idea. Salvatore wrote the module framework, right? So basically to give people the option to add functionality to Redis without him having to write it, which makes sense. And not everybody needs graph functionality, for example, in Redis. So why not make it optional as a module? Makes sense. Very clever. Similar to the Postgres model with extensions. Yep.
I just squeezed that in.
I wonder where he got that from. Anyway.
I mean, no, of course the idea was, and the whole thing originated, of course, from Redis Labs to turn the key value store, as it was then affectionately known, into a multi-model database. Exactly. So you had modules for graph, for text, for search functionality, for time series, exactly. Probabilistic data structures like loops and all the rest of it, entering the code base with the overall idea, of course, to turn this key value store into something much, 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 much more important. In terms of kind of taking away a piece of the cake from other NoSQL databases. The likes of, almost tempted to say, like Mongo, like Couchbase, just to name two document databases. Also part of the NoSQL family at the time.
Neo4j for graph.
Exactly.
Yep.
And these modules, at some stage, had a very interesting property.
Yes, well, I think lots of the modules came from hackathons, right? And people just putting stuff together to build an idea.
The point that I'm driving it is actually, when Salvatore first created Redis, he released it under 3-clause BSD as a very permissive license. Take the code, do whatever you want with it. The modules at some stage, shortly after their release, because much of the code base actually came from Redis Labs themselves.
Indeed.
Entered not that permissive license agreement, but rather something much, much more restrictive.
Well, yes, but they weren't really the first to do this, right? They were
absolutely not. No,
the likes of Mongo and Elasticsearch, maybe. I can't remember. Elasticsearch.
I think they came later, but yes,
they came later.
The same lines. But the idea, of course, was to protect these IPs coming from Redis Labs under a more restrictive license than a 3-clause BSD. With the promise, I think that was in 2018, 2019, when
2018-ish,
put under something called Redis Source Available License, RSAL. That cost a lot of, for want of a better term, that caused a lot of discussion in the community. And as a result, for example, projects like GoodForms, details were in the show notes, of course, were formed. Now, we should probably explain what GoodForms is, or was actually.
Was that the fork?
That was the fork of the modules, Redis Search and Redis Graph, just to name two of them, in 2018, 2019, just prior to this license change. So Chris Lamb, who was at the time, details again may or not with the show notes, was a Debian architect or Debian engineer. He was pretty close to the core of the Debian project anyway. Forked the whole thing with the idea to create a project called GoodForms. He got a FOSDEM talk out of it in 2019 with the idea to take the then existing codebase of the modules that were not subject to the RSAL in terms of maintaining the permissive licensing model that they had been released under initially. He got a FOSDEM talk out of it, and the last commit of the GitHub repo goes back about 4 years.
Well, it's not surprising, really, isn't it?
What's that, Martin? Give us a
because the pretty much all the modules were built by Redis engineers, so therefore,
yes,
yeah.
But you see, the point that I'm making here is basically yes, he forked the whole thing, but the community didn't pick up on it.
Yeah, but this is it, right? I mean, you can't just you can fork something and continue to develop it yourself, but then
depending on the licensing model, yes, of course.
But then if you're diverging from the main code base that people will be using, then you don't have compatibility and all that kind of issues. So it doesn't really work, does it? So.
Good point, but you see when.
But yes, in theory, yes, the community could have picked it up and said, "No, we'll run with this
yes.
and we'll make something out of it." But obviously, they didn't think so.
If memory serves correct, when this whole new license change was introduced in 2018, there was a promise made by, I think it was Redis Labs, or at least Laboratory anyway, that Redis, the core, had.
No, that was Yiftach. He said this.
Yes, that was Yiftach, exactly. That
he
Redis
said this on Reddit. Yeah.
Exactly. That Redis always was, have been, is, and will be under 3-clause BSD.
Yep.
As in the core itself. And that promise was broken, Martin.
Last week.
On the 20th of March in 2024.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, depending on when this goes out. Not last week, yeah.
Exactly. So, Martin, what do you make of this?
Well, what do I make of this? It's, I guess, how this... I mean, looking at the reason, that is pretty clear why they have done this.
Okay, we should probably shed some more light on the inner workings of Redis. Formerly known as Redis Labs, the name change happened.
The company, yes. Okay.
Yeah, this is pretty important because that might go to some extent explaining why this happened. The company was renamed in 2021 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah, a couple of years.
Ofer stepped back as the CEO in 2023. Or 2022?
2022, I think, actually. Yeah.
2022, okay. Yiftach stepped back as the CTO the year after that. A guy called Roland Trollop, or Trollopy, I don't know how to pronounce the second name. Over as the CEO, exactly. Apparently a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. You may find further details on LinkedIn. Took over, as I said, as the CEO. And I reckon under his regime, this license change actually was initiated, because I reckon if both Ofer and Yiftach would have been at the helm, this wouldn't have happened in the first place.
Yeah, I would agree.
Speculation, of course.
But going back to the Ofer and Yiftach situation as well, I mean, they were always reluctant to take a lot of funding because of exactly that reason, that once the VCs, get control of your organization, then they have only one objective in mind, which is not that related to whether something is under a certain license or not. It's how much money can we get on? What return can we get on our investment?
When I joined in 2018, and I mean, I'm not revealing this just because yes. It's all on TechCrunch anyway, and some other websites. The company had undergone about 5 rounds of VC funding already.
Yep. Yes, but quite low, relatively low for 5 rounds.
So I reckon that, and this is pure speculation because we're not privy to to the level of detail with regards to the inner workings of Redis or Redis Labs, as was unknown. So my suspicion is that Ofer and Yiftach still had the majority shares.
Of course.
We might be wrong, of course. But the thing is...
the thing is that the last funding round was Series G or something. Which is quite, for a startup that's going that far without IPOing is obviously
Well,
a seriously long time.
Yeah, I mean, fair play to them, but then they missed the boat because they had the opportunity to float the company before the dip. They didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we're not revealing any secrets here. Quite a few people, and some of the execs as well, left for a company called CockroachDB over the last 3 years, I suppose. That's a fair assumption. Quite a few execs and also the lower ranks of the company defected.
Well, don't forget yourself as well. You left. So.
Martin, you left first.
Did I?
You did, yes.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Oh, yes, I remember. Yes.
Of course, Martin. We're the sole people to blame. Exactly.
Anyway, yeah, all went downhill from there. Anyway, yep.
Carrying on.
Carrying on. Yep.
Yeah, quite a few people actually, and there's something important that we probably should mention as well.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from the bookshop, Redis Labs already, and Redis took that to perfection, managed to get in bed with two important hyperscalers. Microsoft probably being the more important one, and the Google platform as in GCP probably being the second most important one.
Mm.
Because if you take a close look at the corresponding websites, the marketing pitch with both Azure Cache for Redis as well as GCP Memory Store is these products that you can rent from site hypervisors scale up to a certain point, and beyond this point, and especially if you have further functionality that is only available in the enterprise version, because at the end of the day, Redis Labs already was an open core company in terms of, yes, you could get the code base, the core on GitHub, but any enterprise functionality, such as active, just to name a clustering option, was just available with the Enterprise Edition.
Well, don't forget the proxy, right, which was a very important part of Redis Enterprise, which also Salvatore said he was going to build, but I guess that never
did. Exactly.
No, for obvious reasons. Yeah.
For the less technical people inclined, the proxy essentially, and again, it's probably not because it used to be on the Redis Labs website, left, right, and center. Essentially, is a piece of software that enables hyperscaling within a cluster.
Well, it proxies requests to multiple Redises, really. Yeah. Hence the name.
It helps with the parallelization of database queries inside the cluster to a big extent, because
queries is a strong word, right? But, request. Yeah.
Also known as queries, not across anyway.
No. Well, I would disagree with that. But anyway, let's not go into.
Okay, and to cut a long story short, all of these enterprise features only were available with the commercial version to be purchased with the subscription model. And that's exactly how both Microsoft and Google positioned this premium offering that, of course, has been available in the corresponding marketplaces for quite some time.
Oh, yeah.
Needless to say, the other hyperscalers, the likes of the Bookshop and, of course, Alibaba, wouldn't go that far. And this is an important point. Exactly. This is a very important point because, as we will explain in a minute, that has certain repercussions. So, summary is that some hyperscalers saw the light at the end of the tunnel, got in bed with a sustainable, I'm tempted to say, revenue model, because there was speculation in the marketplace that AWS would make at least 12 figures with Elasticache in any given year. Again, speculation in the marketplace, never confirmed by AWS. So a lot of money was to be made. And of course, you would only get the modules with the hyperscalers that were or that are in bed with Redis. Because otherwise, because of the module license restrictions, you couldn't get these modules elsewhere. This is the important bit now. So if you want to have a time series database in your favorite hyperscaler environment, you are left with a couple of options. Either you can go for a native offering.
Yep.
with a hyperscaler, like just to name the example of a time series database, you can go for Influx on AWS as a managed service, or you can go for Redis time series with minimal latency and all the rest of it, as in the promises that Redis makes with Microsoft or Google. I'm just naming time series as an example. Not all of the modules are available on all of the hyperscalers. So it's not really a surprise that both AWS, and it's probably important to mention before we go down that road. After the change in 2020, as in when Salvatore stepped down, there was a steering committee formed with all of the major hyperscalers having a say in the matter in terms of steering the project.
Indeed.
Exactly. So quite a few people came from Redis, of course, but all of the rest basically came from AWS, GCP, and you name it.
Yep. Now, it's basically Salvatore was leading the project until then, and then they made a consortium project kind of approach, which is
exactly
very sensible. Yeah.
Now, funny that both people from GCP and AWS stepped down after the recent license change, and details, of course, will be in the show notes. As a matter of fact, Madeline publicly announced her stepping back on LinkedIn. You can't go more public than that, I suppose. When she lamented the fact that due to the license change, she was, more or less, my words, forced to leave the steering committee. That's something, no?
Well, that seems. What depends what the proportion of the steering committee is, right? I mean, I think if I'm not, if I can remember correctly, was there 3 people from Redis on there, and 1 from each hyperscaler.
Yossi Lipan, who's one of the key engineers.
Aura
Agra, whatever his name is, and
Oren, yes.
Oren. Yes. So veterans of the code base.
Indeed. Yes, a majority.
So we should probably take a look at the future in that case. So what's going to happen, Martin? I mean, also give the shot. So we should probably mention actually that quite a few competitors have shaped up over the years. As in drop-in replacements for Redis.
Yes. Well, what will happen is that interesting. Just thinking back of the usage of Redis, right? So clearly, not everybody uses Redis on a hyperscaler. So those people are going to be. How many people run Redis in production, right? That's another question. Or open source Redis in production without support, probably not that many.
Well,
so these are the people that you have to worry about. Think about what are they going to do, right? Are they essentially forced to buy a Redis enterprise license?
Okay, let's take a look at how Redis is used in the majority of use cases, as in typical use cases. Leaving the modules aside, it's probably fair to say that Redis is the most popular caching solution on the planet.
Yeah.
So quite a few projects, Nextcloud among them, have adopted Redis as their main caching solution. That's probably fair to, and the details, of course, are on GitHub. If you just take a look at the dependencies on any given major GitHub code base, especially if you're talking about low latency requirements, chances are Redis is at the very top of that list.
Having said that, Nextcloud probably still run on Redis 5, so they've got a few years leeway.
What is, of course,
the point being that a lot of the core functionality of Redis is the key value and the data structures, which have been around for a long time, right? The additions in 6 and 7 have probably been less impactful for applications, I would say. Anyway,
this is a very, very interesting observation because yes, Man is absolutely correct, because the main use case for Redis is still caching. The modules are there, okay, fair enough. But in contrast to their nearest and dearest competition, like the original NoSQL databases that Redis tried to copy, for want of a better expression, with regards to when it comes to functionality, Redis has enjoyed less than a favorite adoption, let's put it this way. Unless you have a use case that really requires low latency in terms of time series, DocumentDB functionality, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, but then if you go hyperscaler, then do you go Redis module or do you go with another solution which is also available to you, right? So that is a kind of a, I would say, 80-20 for a native solution rather than going for a module with Redis solution. The power of the modules is really having a single Redis installation to look after that gives you all that functionality, which is usually more on-premise than Amazon has all these servers that they built for many years anyway. So
absolutely,
if you're all in on a hyperscaler, then you go with some obscure module. Well, in quotes, right? or do you go, or do you go with an InfluxDB, which is kind of the standard in that area, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you see, Martin, I reckon that depends on the use case. If you leave
it does.
Very low latency in terms of real-time application requirements.
Well, it depends how you define real-time, but yeah.
Anything that the original NoSQL database cannot give you because they are not optimized for real-time deployments. Simple. So if you're looking for sub-microsecond response times with regards to DocumentDB or time series database, chances are you want to take a look at the corresponding Redis module.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how many people actually have adopted modules. That's I have to admit, I don't know that, having not been involved in Redis for a while. There were some more popular modules than others anyway, right?
Oh, yes, exactly. Details may or not be the use cases on Redis.com.
Yes.
For want of a better source.
Anyway, we were talking about the what's going to happen next.
So
right?
Yeah, exactly. So what's going to happen? I mean, we have a few competitors shaping up, the likes of KeyDB as a drop-in replacement of Redis, or for Redis, for one of the expression, that has been around for a couple of years, at least 4, I think.
Don't forget Gemfire.
Gemfire, yes.
It has a Redis adapter, speaks native Redis API. So, yeah.
To revive an almost dead zombie. Exactly. No, jokes aside, I think KeyDB, and of course links will be in the show notes, claims to be even faster than Redis because apparently they got parallelization better. But KeyDB, of course, just offers the native Redis core. It doesn't offer any module functionality. That's the important bit. And as far as I know, of course, I stand to be corrected. Hyperscalers, if you're listening, if I got it wrong, the email address is feedback@linuxinlaws.eu. KeyDB hasn't been adopted by any major hyperscaler yet, I might add. So, Martin, what's going to happen?
What's going to happen is that the hyperscalers will build their own interpretation of Redis, I'm sure.
They will fucking take, and of course the version when it happens, I think is 7.4.2 or something, or 7.4 anyway. Yes, they will take 7.3 or something even older and just simply forget.
Yep.
AWS, of course, has done this with Elasticache already. And I mean,
the thing is they have the resources, right? It's the same with Google building OmniDB and all these kind of things on top of Postgres. But they have the resources at their disposal to build these products out to what they want them to be. And if it doesn't come from the open source, they'll do it themselves.
Plus that the major hyperscalers have done this already. You have Memory Store coming from GCP. You have, of course, Azure Cache for Redis coming from Microsoft. But I think as far as I know, Alibaba offers something similar as a managed service. And I mean, we're just talking about the major hyperscalers anyway. I mean, we're not talking about some obscure cloud provider in the middle of Mongolia offering Redis as a managed service. No, they will simply fork this too. They cannot, of course, deploy the modules because that would violate the license agreement unless they happen to be in bed with Redis already.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen with all of the open source projects? I mean, Debian already has, some projects already have announced the requirement to move away from this after the license change. But it's probably fair to say that quite a few people would be looking for alternatives in terms of KDB is of course open source as well. Immediately after the announcement, something called Redict was announced, whatever you want to call it. Apparently there's some law that Reddit goes back to the point in time when Salvatore left the helm. Details may not be in the show notes, but and this is pretty important. Within the last week of March 2024, an obscure industry body called the Linux Foundation announced a project called Valkey, saying, after the recent license change, blah, 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 whatever, the details are on the website, we decided that Redis is way too important to leave Redis with the new license change. So we've decided to revive the project and do our own thing. Now, fun fact, details of links will be, of course, be in the show notes. If you take a look at the GitHub repo, Valkey was brought into existence in April of 2023. Now, Linux Foundation, if you're listening, I would call that a bit of a contradictory interpretation of history, no?
That doesn't really work, does it? But anyway, yeah. Carry on.
The point that I'm making is basically that somebody very high up the food chain, I suppose, decided that apparently it was on the cards already that...
Well, yes, yeah. You wouldn't do it a year in advance, would you, really, otherwise?
Exactly. So somebody had a hunch, if not more, for one of an expression, pure speculation, of course, now, people, very important, that goes hand in hand, funny enough, with the change of reign at the very top at something called Redis, as in the company now, that should there be a change, we better get cracking on it now. So they forked the code base about a year ago in terms of April 2023, but they choose to do this very much in the stealth mode, unless you were in the know, but announced it just after the license change.
Yeah.
Funny that.
Also, they immediately had a whole bunch of quotes from various cloud providers who are, obviously clearly interested in maintaining Redis open source, like Oracle, Google, AWS. They all have quotes on the subject, right? Yeah. From the Linux for the formation of the Valkey project. Yeah.
So again, what's going to happen? Will the core of Redis under the new license fall by the wayside in terms of will the forks prevail, or will actually be the newly licensed code base continue in terms of GitHub adoption, project adoption, all the rest of it? Never mind open source Linux distributions, the likes of Debian, Fedora, Gentoo, you name it.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a curious one, right?
Is it?
Well, it's. I mean, yes, you can see the argument for doing it, but it's also kind of in a way turning you back on the open source roots, right? As an organization, so it's bound to kind of get a lot of resistance and as you've already seen, new forks coming up, and those forks will be supported by the hyperscalers that are going to benefit from it. So, perhaps not the best decision.
I mean, my take on the situation is many projects.
Before you go, because also, I mean, the open core model is well proven, right? It's exactly. So it's like if you're gonna
absolutely,
if you're gonna divert from that, you have to have some pretty good research to back it, whether or not that will be successful, I would say. Anyway, fine. They probably have done this. Carry on. What were you going to say?
I mean, my hunch is that all of the true open source projects, the likes of Debian, especially Linux distributions come to mind, the likes of Debian, probably not canonical, maybe. I may prove to stand corrected. But the kind of the close at heart, Stalinistic, for want of a better expression, open source distributions will drop Redis. They will adopt a fork.
Yeah.
They will simply go for a truly open source alternative that follows OSI standards as an open source initiative with regards to permissive licensing. Or even GPL licensing, copyleft licensing, you name it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. With regards to the commercial customers, I mean, and again, that goes back to what open source really is. You see, there's a devil's advocate argument that goes along these lines. Open source is a great marketing instrument for the adoption of an open core model in terms of you get the devs with your open source offering to incorporate said code base in your stack. But when it comes down to deployment, compliance or regulatory requirements will demand that you get a support model in place. And this is where the money kicks in terms of the monetization strategy of a project, in terms of, if you want to have support, maybe if you want to have some enterprise use and all the rest of it, then you better go for a subscription which costs money. Coming from a hyperscaler, coming from an open core company, you name it. So the jury, I reckon, is still out with regards to the major commercial adoption of said code base in the wild. Whether people will continue to pay subscription fees to Redis.com or will actually say, now look, we have been supporting our tech stack in-house for the last 10 plus years. We have enough knowledge because we just use the open source code base. Tough luck, we cannot do this any bigger because, for example, the current licensing does contradict our deployment models because we produce software for hyperscalers as well and all the rest of it as a managed service solution, whatever. So, needless to say, with a new licensing model, you cannot do this unless you enter a commercial agreement with Redis. I reckon quite a few of the companies peddling said software probably won't do this because of commercial reasons. So they probably will either stay on the old version, not the smartest idea with regards to when it comes down to security, I suppose, or simply go for a fork at some stage. Never caring about what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah,
that would be my take on the situation. And of course, I'm just talking about Redis Core now. I'm not talking about the modules, which are, of course, a totally different story.
Yes, they are, for sure. Yep. So,
bets are taken. Wages are being accepted. The email address is feedback@linuxinlaws.eu. Please send your feedback to that email address, and we're going to revisit the situation, I suppose, in a year's time.
Well, maybe before then even. Who knows? Who knows how developments will...
Yes, very much so. Any final words before we come to the boxes, Mr. Visser?
Final words. I mean, personally, I think it's a shame. And clearly, Redis is still a great technology, but yeah, it seems to be.
Of course, there's a word missing. Martin, what you meant to say is actually a great database technology.
No, I didn't mean that at all. But we can go into this in another episode. Yeah.
So people, if you can't go to sleep, the episode worth listening to is season 2, episode 28, where
well remembered.
as in the future episode, where Martin will stand to be corrected in terms of why Redis really is a database and not just a key value store. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
jokes aside. Yep. No, I mean I concur, but it's. I mean, your bet is as good as mine. It's. I reckon personally, it was a really fuck up move because Redis is not going to gain for this when it comes down to open source adoption.
Mm-hmm.
That, of course, to some extent, as just explained before, drives monetization to some extent.
Well, it comes back to the old problem about. Well, there's one thing is let's say monetization in a commercial form of the project, and then there's the other case of the developers need to feed themselves as well, right? Which is they're kind of, as soon as VCs get involved, then that becomes a whole different matter, as we know.
Very much so, yes. And with these final remarks, we have arrived at the POXes.
Yeah.
So, Martin, what's your POX?
My POX? Well, I'm going to go for Simon Riggs, actually,
Who's Simon Riggs and why is that a POX?
Because, who's Simon Riggs? Simon Riggs is one of the Postgres core contributors. He ran Second Quadrant, a major Postgres organization for many, many, many years. Very successful. Many commits to Redis and so on. To Postgres, not to Redis, I imagine. Who knows? It seems unlikely, but that's sadly he passed away this week, so that's why.
And we are talking about the last week of March of 2024.
Indeed.
Yes. I think he died in a plane crash. No.
Well, he had a plane crash and died, but yes, I don't know the exact details. So,
Okay. Was he one of the key contributors to Postgres?
Well, he was part of the core team, and the core team of Postgres has always been 6 people.
Wow. Okay.
Which are not allowed to be from one company, all the kind of things. So they have a very nice way of organizing the project.
Okay.
And yeah, he was one of them. So he's been Postgres all his not all his life, but
and he was quite young, right? He was under 60.
If you call that young, then yes.
Yeah, in comparison to other people, indeed, Martin, very much so.
It's all relative, yeah.
Yes, I mean it's way too young to die. This is what I wanted to express now.
Well, there's never too young to die. It's just these things happen, right? But
if you're 150,
it's not ideal.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're 150, you are way above average.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I mean, if you pass away, if you're under 60, that's a different story.
Average.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So your POX is...
On a more light-hearted note, exactly. Yes. Actually, as a matter of fact, I have a double box. 2 movies. Get Shorty, yes. 2 movies. Get Shorty.
Isn't that a million years old?
No. It's only 20 years old.
Okay.
Maybe slightly more.
That's pretty close. Anyway. Yeah.
No, do you know these movies?
I'm sure I've seen Get Shorty. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But
it's about... I mean, I won't give away too many details because that would really spoil the fun. But it's essentially...
Who's in it?
George Travolta. John Travolta. Not George Travolta, but John Travolta. John Travolta playing a mobster.
Yes.
And
It's very amusing.
In all sorts of shenanigans.
Yep.
And I reckon it comes very close to something called Pulp Fiction. With regards to the humor and the script and all the rest of it. As Martin rightly observed, these 2 movies are ancient. They go back at least 15, 20 years. But it was probably the rebound after Pulp Fiction that Mr. Travolta was looking for with regards to the original comedy called Grease, where it all started. Back in the 50s, I think. I stand to be corrected on the decade anyway, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't think that was the 50s, but anyway.
Maybe it was in the 60s. Dieses Mal noch with the show notes.
Well, it was probably actually set in the 50s.
It was set in the 50s, but I think the movie was released early 80s, if not completely mistaken.
Considerably later, yes.
Yes, yeah, very much so. Yeah, so, I mean...
Yes, 80s, Bee Gees, indeed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Saturday night and stuff and whatever. Mm-hmm. The local disco, yes. So if you are looking for something to pass away the time with, for entertaining humor, fun, and all the rest of it, and if you've seen Pulp Fiction, and if you like that sort of humor, these are the two movies, As in Get Shorty and Be Cool, that you don't want to miss.
Very good.
And with that, thank you very much for listening.
And don't forget to comment about the better.
Yes, exactly. Send in your comments, and if we like the comments, you will be part of a future show, maybe.
Yeah, very good.
And see you soon. This is the Linux In-Laws.
You come for the knowledge,
but stay for the madness.
Thank you for listening.
This podcast is licensed under the latest version of the Creative Commons license, type Attribution Share Alike. Credits for the intro music go to Blue Sea Roosters for their song Solid Market, to Twin Flames for their piece called The Flow, used for the segment intros, and finally to Celestial Ground for their song Sweet Justice, used by the Dark Side. You find these and other ditties licensed under CC at Jamendo, a website dedicated to liberate the music industry from choking copyright legislation and other crap concepts.